is a former Deputy Prime Minister of the government of Zimbabwe. He is the author of In Search of the Elusive Zimbabwean Dream, an autobiography of thought leadership. He was one of the three principals who created and led the Government of National Unity, the GNU, with other two being the former Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai and the former President Robert Mugabe. As the Deputy Prime Minister, his key function included assisting the Prime Minister in policy formulation and supervising policy implementation. He worked on three national efforts, which is Shared National Vision, Rebranding Zimbabwe, and National Infrastructure Master Plan. Professor Mutambara will be presenting on the role of the boards in driving Zimbabwe's competitive advantage under the National Development Strategy. Professor Mutambara, welcome, and please take over the platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that detailed introduction. I'll try to make this more of a conversation, and so I'll speak and then I'll allow us to have comments and questions. I'm going to go through a number of slides. If I move too quickly on a slide, it means it's not too critical. I'm just trying to tell you that the information is important. And so I'll try to speak for a short while and then allow for a conversation. Our discussion is driving Zimbabwe's competitive advantage under the National Development Strategy. What is the role of the boards? Okay. The starting point is to understand what is competitive advantage for companies, for industries, and also for a country. We must understand that. Then what is the National Development Strategy itself? What are the key elements of that strategy? We must understand that. And then we'll look at the role of the boards, in particular, how the boards must align their activities to the NDS. And then we'll conclude by looking at some elements of the fourth industrial revolution. Things are changing. It can't be business as usual. This is the framework of our work today. We must start with the end in sight. What be the result when we are successful? We want board effectiveness, which leads to the success of the National Development Strategy. And what are the pillars of that board strategy or the board activities? Corporate governance, risk management, vision, values, and strategy. And what are we trying to do? Balancing the interests of the shareholders and the stakeholders, and also pursuing prosperity of the company. So that's the big picture. When we are successful as a board, we are going to have board effectiveness, which will lead to the success of the NDS. And what are the key pillars? Corporate governance, risk management, and the right vision, values, and the right strategy, which is aligned to NDS. That is the end. That is what will success look like at the end. Okay. What is competitive advantage? We'll quickly just go through this stuff. How do you get an edge over competitors? By generating high sales, better margins, better premium over your competitors. What are the drivers of competitiveness for a company? Firm structure, product pricing, product offerings. We want to have sustainable competitive advantage for a company. If you have sustainable competitive advantage, it is very difficult for people to neutralize it or to overtake you. So as the board, you must make sure that your strategy is sustainable. Your strategy is competitive, but also sustainable. That is your mandate. That is your charge as a board. You must also understand the idea of comparative advantage. This is where we're talking about location of assets, raw materials, labor, and technology. Your access to those assets could give you what is called comparative advantage. And so the board member must understand competitive advantage. The board member must understand comparative advantage. Those two are critical, so that when you do your oversight, when you do your supervision, you are clear on the competitive aspects and also clear on the comparative aspects of the strategy. Now, the key player in terms of competitiveness is Michael Porter. He's got two models. The first model is for companies and businesses. The second one is for countries. As the board, you must have a sense of what we mean when you say five forces model. You must have a sense of what we mean when we say Porter's diamond model. The first one is about how a company can be competitive and an industry can be competitive. Then the diamond model is about national competitiveness. How can a nation be competitive? What is the national competitive advantage of a nation? That's addressed by the diamond. So those two philosophies are important. I won't spend too much time on them, but as a board member, as a CEO, as a senior manager, you must understand those concepts pretty well. So the forces model is about analyzing business competitiveness in terms of competitiveness, profitability, and attractiveness. Okay, and you talk about those 5 forces, and there's been an extra force which is called the 6 complementars. Again, have a broad understanding of the forces that Michael Porter uses to analyze competitiveness. Okay, and go and revise your MBA, go and revise your understanding of those factors and what they bring into the table. What is the use of the model? It is used to analyze the competitiveness of a business. It is used to analyze and understand industrial organizational economics. It determines competitive intensity. You can use it to identify industry structure. Then you use it to determine corporate strategy. By the way, as the board, you approve strategy. So the strategy belongs to the board. It might be crafted by the executive, but as the oversight entity, you own the strategy. So you must have a sense of how the strategy is crafted. Now we're coming to nation now. What do we mean by national competitiveness? What do we mean by Zimbabwe's competitive advantage? What does that mean to say the competitive advantage of a nation? This is about why certain industries in a particular nation are competitive internationally. The telecoms industry, the banking sector in Zimbabwe, being very competitive in SADC, being very competitive in Africa, being very competitive globally. That's what we want when we say national competitiveness. Then a country becomes a competitive holder of those companies, holder of those industries. So nations don't compete directly, but industries within those countries compete. So when you say national competitive advantage, we're talking about why certain industries within a particular nation are competitive internationally, whereas others are not. We're asking why some nations are competitive and others are not. Taiwan, Singapore, Japan, China. Why are those countries competitive? Why do they dominate certain industries? This is the challenge and question around national competitive advantage. The board must have an understanding of this factor. Okay. So again, this is now guided by Porter's diamond model with 4 conditions: factor conditions, demand conditions, related and supporting industries. Again, have an understanding of the diamond, the 4 edges of the diamond. What are the factor conditions in Zimbabwe? What are the demand conditions in Zimbabwe? What are related and supporting industries in Zimbabwe? What is the firm structure? What is the firm strategy and the competition within that industry? This is the framework of the diamond, which we use to discuss the competitive advantage of a country. You must understand this as the board. That's your diamond there. Then the diamond does not exist in a vacuum. There's chance, there's opportunity, then there's government. So as a board member, are you clear in terms of the opportunities existing in Zimbabwe? As a board member, are you clear on government policy? Are you clear about NDS? Do you know what it talks about? And how does it fit into the diamond that Michael Porter talks about? This is the framework which we must use as board members so that we align ourselves to NDS. Okay, those are the details of that. Zimbabwe's competitive advantage. So the board must understand the drivers of competitive advantage. When you say competitive advantage, what are the drivers? And the drivers are factor conditions, factor endowments, firm strategy, and chance and government. This framework must be used to understand the meaning of Zimbabwe's competitive advantage. Okay? Then we're talking about Zimbabwe here. What is the NDS? What is it? What are the components? What are the key drivers? Where does it fit in the diamond model? Where does the government of Zimbabwe sit within the diamond model? The government sets the national vision, the government sets the strategy, goals, and policies. And so that will influence the competitive nature of the country. Okay? And as a board member, be clear on the NDS. What are the key elements of the NDS? Okay, here are some of the elements. Per capita income of 4,000, employment 80%. What are you doing as a board member to enable Zimbabwe to achieve a per capita income of 4,000? What is the board doing to create jobs? What is the board doing to do poverty reduction? So as you sit as a board member, as you sit as a board, look at these targets as your targets and say, what can we do as a board to enable Zimbabwe to achieve its goals, to achieve its targets? Okay, what are some of the aspects? Macroeconomic stability. How do you enhance, how do you support the ambition for macroeconomic stability in Zimbabwe? How do you ensure that there's inclusive economic growth? Remember, the government is an enabler. The private sectors are the doers. You as a company are the doers. You create growth. Where is the inclusive growth going to come from? Can you play your part as a company? Can you play your part as a goal to achieve these targets of NDS? Value chain. What is your policy as a board in terms of value addition? Where is your beneficiation strategy? Zimbabwe wants value addition. Zimbabwe wants beneficiation. They want to move up the value chain. As a board member, as a board, can you ensure that your company is engaged with value addition, is engaged in beneficiation, in keeping with this ambition of the NDS? How can you make sure that we have improved earnings from beneficial minerals, especially in the mining sector? Again, be conversant, be clear on the ambitions of the government in terms of value chain and structural transformation, so you can play your role as a company through the board. Digital economy. Here we need to help the government. It shouldn't be called digital economy. It's the fourth industrial revolution. Digital is just part of it, but anyway, it's crafted as digital economy. As a board, how are you supporting the digital economy? Or more importantly, what we call the fourth industrial revolution. Again, as a board, as you play your oversight function, make sure you play an effective role in terms of supporting the digital economy. Infrastructure. Infrastructure is the economy. The economy is infrastructure. Here are the ambitions in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the NDS. What can you do as a board to support infrastructure development? Water, electricity, roads, construction, ICT. Without infrastructure, there can be no national strategy. Without infrastructure, there can be no industrialization. Without infrastructure, there can be no economic development. What are you going to do as a board to support the ambitions around infrastructure as described in the NDS? Environment, climate change, the ambitions from the NDS. What are you going to do at the board level to reduce carbon emissions, to encourage clean energy, to encourage renewable energy? How are you transporting your goods? How are you generating your energy? So again, at the board level, you can make sure that you play a role in terms of environmental protection and climate change as described by the NDS. These principles must be clear to the board so that they can drive their companies and organizations in alignment to the ambitions around climate change and the environment. Critical success factors. So this is what we call showstoppers. If these things don't happen, there'll be no strategy in Zimbabwe. There'll be no economic growth in Zimbabwe. These are what we call critical success factors, the store shoppers. If there's no production, there's no strategy. If there's no productivity, there's no strategy. If there's no infrastructure, there's no strategy. If there's no change management, there's no strategy. As a board member, as a CEO, as a senior manager, understand these factors, which are the stop shoppers, the showstoppers. They will stop the strategy. And so we must have change management. We must have production. We must have productivity. What role can you play to ensure that the critical success factors are achieved? Because they are what we call showstoppers. Without them, there's no strategy. Without them, there's no growth. Without them, there's no business. So production, high productivity, you must ensure that your company that you are the board for has those. In particular, you must track what we call productivity growth. Can we have an expansion of productivity growth? That's a better measure than production. So measurement of productivity growth is a major component of our strategy. Only organizations which are well run and have effective boards can deliver this. Is your board well run? Is your board effective? And if it is effective, if it is well run, then we're going to get productivity and productivity growth. So our companies are structured as private and public. And in Zimbabwe, we have Zim Code, which covers everybody, and then the Act, which covers the SEPs. Again, what I'm talking about today affects all companies in the private sector, in the public sector. We must all be aligned to the national strategy. We must all be aligned to the NDS. And the governance structure is guided by Zim Code, and the corporate governance structure is governed by the Act and the Code. Okay. Now that we have gotten a sense of where we are with NDS, let's look at the board itself. What is the role of the board? Number one, you must ensure the company's prosperity, profitability of the company. You must do that by directing the affairs of the company. You must also make sure that you protect and enhance the interests of the shareholders. That's objective number two. Then, of course, you must manage your stakeholders. Those three are very different. The company as an entity, the shareholders as a group, then the stakeholders as a group. Your job as a director is to make sure that the company prospers, the company is profitable, number one. Number two, that the shareholders' interests are taken care of. And then number three, you take cognizance of the aspirations and ambitions of the stakeholders. Now, who are the relevant stakeholders in Zimbabwe? The country, the government of Zimbabwe are your stakeholders. And of course, NDS is coming from government. So you must care as the board about the NDS because it's part of your mandate. Your mandate includes stakeholders. And the NDS is coming from the country. It's coming from the government of Zimbabwe. Number three, company's prosperity is linked to the NDS. You can't prosper in Zimbabwe if you're not linked to the NDS. The National Development Strategy is what is going to drive the country. So as Econet, as Barclays, or whatever company you are in Stanbic, whatever company you are in Zimbabwe, you must make sure that your prosperity is linked to the National Development Strategy. And that is part of your job, okay? And of course, you know, corporate governance, risk management. The key issue is aligning all these things to the NDS. As you play your role in corporate governance, accountability, fairness, transparency, assurance, leadership, stakeholder, these things must be done in conjunction with your understanding of the NDS. Okay? You must do your oversight function in pursuit of NDS. You must do internal controls to achieve NDS. You must approve a strategy which is aligned to NDS. Remember, the executive might create a strategy, but you as a board has to approve that strategy. The buck stops to the board. And don't approve a strategy which is not aligned to NDS. So for you to do that, you must understand the content and direction of NDS. And as you supervise operations, make sure the operations are aligned to NDS. Make sure your values as a company, your values as an entity are also similar to the values of the NDS. That is the role of the boards in driving competitive advantage in Zimbabwe. Okay? And remember, as a board, your challenges sometimes are conflicting. Sometimes they are actually in tension. For example, there might be a tension between what's good for the shareholder, what's good for the stakeholder. Your job is to mitigate and manage that conflict. Okay? It could be different between entrepreneurial spirit and control. You want creativity, you want entrepreneurship, but you also want prudent control. It's a tension to be managed. You must be sufficiently knowledgeable about the company, but you must also be able to step back to retain an objective long-term view. A tension to be managed by the board. Hands-on versus oversight. Entrepreneurship versus stability. You must manage those conflicts in alignment to the NDS. Short-term versus long-term. Local versus wider competitive issues. Okay? You must be able to focus on the commercial and think about the employees, about partners, about society. Balance is the subject for you as a board member. You must be able to balance these competing interests as you play your role. Each board member must recognize these challenges and ensure that they contribute to finding the right balance. Balance is your second name as the board member. Just to summarize, to make sure you understand your role as a board, you are in charge of strategy, you are in charge of vision, you are in charge of values. You set up that strategy, you own it, you approve it, then you delegate to management. You must exercise accountability to shareholders, and also you must be responsible to the relevant stakeholders. That's your NDS right there. So the buck stops with the board. When things go wrong, you are guilty as charged as the board. So you must play your role effectively. Okay? You must have a sense of understanding the difference between direction, management, and ownership. As a board member, have clarity on what we mean by direction. Have clarity on what we mean by management. Have clarity on what we mean by ownership. There are three different things. Play your role in corporate governance with that understanding and make sure you're working towards board effectiveness. That's the essence of the role of the board. Also look at global best practice. You have your code, the Zimbabwe Zim code, you have your act, but what about South Africa? Look at King 3, look at King 4. With King 3, they are bringing sustainability as a core element. In other words, creation of shared value. Value for business, value for the community, value for the environment. And the report is now integrated as opposed to having a nice to have around corporate social responsibility. So learn from other domains. In the US, Sarbanes-Oxley Act. In South Africa, King 1, King 2, up to King 4. And King 4 is a build up on King 3. What are the key issues on King 4? Social and Ethics Committee. That's a new one coming under King 4. Before, we used to say apply or explain. Under King 4, we're saying apply and explain. Okay, it's no longer enough to say apply or explain. No, apply and explain. These are the new introductions in King 4. We are saying ethical leadership. We are saying attitude. We are saying mindset and behavior must be informed by global best practices. Learn from other jurisdictions. Learn from the Malawians. Learn from Singapore. Learn from the Chinese. Learn from the Americans. Learn from yourselves. But you must always embrace global best practices around corporate governance. Okay? We have our codes in Zimbabwe, but let us learn from others as well. Fourth Industrial Revolution. This one, I can see that even NDS is not up to scratch on this subject. They need help from the professor. Tell them over there. Tell Muchuli, Professor Mutambara is available to help you. Your NDS is limited. The fourth Industrial Revolution is a revolution because it affects all sectors, all economies, all industries. The first revolution was water and steam. The second was electric power. The third was electronics. Now the fourth is now a fusion between physical, digital, and biological spheres. And it's affecting every industry. Okay? Why is it a revolution? Because of the velocity of the changes. Why is it a revolution? Because of the scope of the changes. Why is it a revolution? Because of system impact that it brings. AI is changing media. AI is changing commerce. AI is changing the entire economy. So the NDS in Zimbabwe must actually be anchored around the fourth industrial revolution. And you as a board member must understand what we mean by the fourth industrial revolution. What are we talking about? We're talking about augmented artificial intelligence. We're talking about intelligent algorithms, augmented reality, human augmentation, what we call human 2.0, big data, Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, nanotechnology, autonomous vehicles, drones, driverless cars. You must have an understanding as a board member what we're talking about when we say IoT, when we say AR, when we say IA, when we say AI. Be conversant with the drivers of the fourth industrial revolution: 3D printing, biotechnology, minerals, material science, renewable energy, energy storage, robotics and mechatronics, quantum computing, cloud computing, blockchain technology. This is a revolution in e-commerce, a revolution in media, a revolution in medicine. As a board member, it cannot be business as usual. Your function is going to change under the fourth industrial revolution. Okay? It's important that you have a sense of what they're thinking about at Microsoft, at Sony, at Hitachi, at GM, at MIT, at Harvard. What are some of the issues? I want you to listen directly from them.
The original Industrial Revolution was driven by the discovery that you could use steam engines to do all kinds of interesting things.
That was followed by additional revolutions for electricity and computers and communications technology. We're now in the early stages of the fourth Industrial Revolution, which is bringing together digital, physical, and biological systems.
One of the features of this fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing, but it changes us.
We need a different economic model that will allow us to meet the basic needs of every human on the planet, and that will be focused not on growth per se, but on maximizing human well-being.
We have energy technologies that can power our civilization, but how do we get it and implement it at the scale we need at a price that people around the world can afford?
If we're able to do something to transform cities, to make them more efficient, then the impact can be huge.
We can use asset tracking, we can use IT, we can use 3D printing to decouple growth from the resource constraints we have.
The question of adding quality to quantity.
In the next few years, I expect the digital transformation of life to bring huge changes. Everything from science to healthcare to sensors to robotics.
Whether it's information technology and the acceleration we see in artificial intelligence, you just look across the board and you can see a lot is happening.
It's really the notion of digital technology pervasively impacting every walk of life in every vertical industry on all parts of the globe.
The speed is mind-boggling. What I'm particularly concerned about it is how little the world is prepared for the fourth industrial revolution.
If we are not innovative, if we're not creative enough, it will be very difficult to survive in this century.
Countries in emerging markets should take the lead. Mobile platforms will define how fast the fourth industrial revolution will be embraced by the countries.
It's very difficult to try to bridge the gap between a borderless industrial revolution that's being governed by different policies and regulations in each territory and country.
We're always looking for new technology and how it makes the process more efficient, how it makes the quality higher. But one of the things that it's really creating is a need for those that have a technical background.
52% of the encounters with our primary care physicians were handled virtually. Just a massive change.
The technologies available today to scientists, to clinicians, and to everyday people will impact and change healthcare forever.
Humans and machines are assisting each other.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it cannot be business as usual. We are now pushing for what we call critical thinking, mastering how to think, problem solving, structured thinking, blended learning, interdisciplinary approaches, ecosystem thinking, emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence, existential intelligence, spiritual intelligence. You as a board member must have all those intelligences. Your IQ is not enough. Acquisition of key competencies, versus traditional education, judgment, negotiation, cognitive capacity, flexibility, knowledge production, knowledge management, and IP management. These are the new skills, the new critical competencies that are required for you as a board member to survive under the fourth industrial revolution. It cannot be business as usual. Okay? We are going through a revolution which will affect the traditional business. That model that I presented, the 5 forces, is affected by the fourth industrial revolution. That diamond model is affected by the industrial revolution. So we need to make sure we factor this into how we do the model. The model is going to change, okay? The diamond is going to change. So this model is now changed by the fourth industrial revolution. And we can look at the details later on, disruptions, the entrance and so on. I'm rushing through this, but you can actually go and see how the models are changed by the fourth industrial revolution. Also move away from this notion of new normal. You can't have a new normal. We have waves of unrelenting disruptions, ever-changing environment, constant battle for survival. With constant changes, we neither know nor agree on the new normal. So you can't have a new normal because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Today's new normal is not tomorrow's new normal. Hence, the new normal is a misnomer. So as a board member, you are not allowed to talk about the new normal. You must talk about the next normal. The next normal is a much more dynamic and transient perspective, which allows you to always change. So out with the new normal, in with the next normal. It's a more appropriate phrase in an ever-changing environment. You must understand what is driving the next normal. Change in demand to digital, change in consumption, transformation of the labor market, and the need for reskilling, the need for distributed networks and so on. We are saying it cannot be business as usual. You must understand the new notions of pivoting, re-engineering, and also the role of data and analytics. You must have data, you must use data and analytics to make decisions. Forecasting is so yesterday, predictions are so yesterday. You need data-driven strategies. You need dashboards. You need to understand how to use information to make decisions as a board. What are the measurements about customers, measurements about suppliers and regulations, and also understand the source of that data. Okay. In conclusion, because I want to make sure we have more of a conversation in the end here, we are saying that as a board member, we must have a sense of what it means to be competitive as a business, as an industry. We must understand what it means to be competitive as a country. We must also be conversant with the key elements of the NDS. There's NDS 1, which is ending in 2025, and then there'll be NDS 2, which is not yet available. All those are important for us as CEOs, middle managers, and board members for us to align ourselves to the strategy. Understand the major elements of the National Development Strategy and align the board activities to the NDS. And when you do that, you are going to get board effectiveness, you're going to get success of the NDS, and your key pillars are going to be corporate governance, risk management, vision, values, and strategy. But more importantly, all this must be understood within the context of the fourth industrial revolution. So I want to thank you very much for this opportunity, Kangai, but it's an open question, and I want us to have some comments and questions around this subject. But thank you very much. I hand back the floor to you. But it's important that as board members, we get up to speed with the national plan about competitive advantage and also the fourth industrial revolution. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Can we put our hands together? There is a button where we can actually show our reactions. Put our hands together for the professor. Thank you very much, Professor, indeed, for this presentation. I think eye-opening. I think our audience are actually coming both on our WhatsApp and on this platform to actually thank you for this very insightful presentation. I don't want to take anything away and dilute what you have just presented. I just wanted to know, Professor, as we start the questions. When you look at the current setup of boards in Zimbabwe, what do you think will need to be done in order to improve the skill sets at board level?
Okay. Very briefly, training. There's no shortcut to training. There is no alternative to reskilling, retooling. And also remember, the day you stop learning is the day you die. More importantly, because of the fourth industrial revolution, whatever you learned at school, whatever your expertise is no longer sufficient. We want what we call a Renaissance man, a Renaissance woman, a lawyer who understands technology, an engineer who understands philosophy, an economist who understands psychology, who understands physics. So you must become a Renaissance woman, a Renaissance man, where you are a master of various disciplines. So to do that, you need reskilling, retraining, and continuous education. So the IOD in Zimbabwe must come up with programs of training board members, training CEOs, training managers, so that they have better skills to run their boards. Thank you.
Thank you for the answer. I will take questions from our audience. And I've got a list of questions, also about 39, I think some of them which have been covered. As I wait to take a question from one of the audience, I see Dr. From Christina Machekeza. Christina asked about strategically positioning the boards in view of the African Free Trade Agreement. Could you please tell us how we can align the board initiatives to the NDS as well as continental opportunities that are presented by the Free Continental Trade Agreement?
Yeah, you're coming to my favorite subject. The future does not belong to nations. The future belongs to regional blocks. The future belongs to the continent. So Agenda 2063 should be our strategy as Africans. And then it goes down to the national strategy. So NDS should be speaking to Agenda 2063. NDS should be speaking to the Africa Free Trade Area strategy, so that we are all aligned to the Africa strategy. And once we have done that, then the boards would automatically be aligned to NDS, to the Free Trade Area Agreement, and to Agenda 2063. So it's very important, because we are not going to survive as little Zimbabwe or little Botswana or little South Africa. Survival under globalization belongs to the African continent, working as one block, one free trading area. What is the capacity? 1.3 billion Africans. What is the capacity? $2.5 trillion GDP. That's what will make sense to China, makes sense to America, makes sense to Europe. So very correct. We must make sure that we align the NDS to the Continental Free Trade Area Strategy, to Agenda 2063. Once we have done that, the boards must be aligned to NDS and then to the continental strategies. That is the only way you're going to have a regional presence as a company. You're in Botswana, you're in Malawi, you're in Asia, you're in Europe, because there are some companies like Stanbic, which are global, like Econet, which are global. Those companies must have a strategy which takes into account the Continental Free Trade Area strategy, take into account Agenda 2063, take into account the agenda for the globe. So the alignment must be done at several levels. At the country level, the NDS must be aligned to the Africa strategy. And then our boards are aligned to NDS in the Africa program. But it's work that has to be done by the boards and the country together.
Thank you, Professor. There's another question from Bernard Chidziva, which I'm going to hybrid or intertwine with another question from the audience. And it talks about, do you think that the boards are fully equipped in delivering their mandate from a policy perspective, from the acts, and well, we have touched on the skills. Do you think that the boards are fully equipped to deliver their mandates as we look at delivering at corporate level, to NDS level, to the block of nations that you're talking about?
You know, look, it's work in progress. You are never fully equipped. You must continuously improve yourselves. You must continuously learn. You must learn from global best practice. Learn from your own codes, Zim code and the Act. Learn from King 1 to King 5, King 4. Learn from Sarbanes-Oxley Act in the US. Learn from the Asian codes. And so that you are always moving. Because under globalization, under the fourth industrial revolution, you are no island unto yourself. Your company will buy products from China. Your company will sell products to China. Your company will have presence in China. Your company will have presence in India. Your company will have presence in Ethiopia. So it has to be a continuous process of education. So the codes are there for corporate governance in the country. But are board members educated about those codes? Do they know the provision of those codes? We must have workshops so that senior managers, CEOs, and board members are up to speed in terms of Zim code, up to speed in terms of King 4. We must make sure that the parastatals, the SEPs, know what's in the Act, know what's in Zim code. Continuous education must be given to board members and to managers so that we are properly equipped. The information is out there, but it's important that we have platforms of sharing so that we improve our knowledge base as board members, as managers, and CEOs.
Good. Thank you, Professor. I will pick up a question that is on our chat box from Tabs Gomo. And the question is about ESG, environment, social, and governance. And the question says, I do not see sustainability roadmaps, in many corporates and boards focus. How can you encourage boards to actually look at this ESG aspect, which is a committee that we provide leadership at IODZ as well?
It is because we are old school. We are thinking in terms of shareholders. How do I make my shareholders happy? How do I make my company profitable? And then we throw in a little few cents as corporate social responsibility. We build a little school, we donate to charity, and we think we've done enough. That is old school. Corporate social responsibility saw yesterday. We must ban it at IOD. We don't want to hear anything about CSR. We need a new value system called creation of shared value. So when you do your strategy, tell us what you're going to do for business. Tell us what you're going to do for the environment. Tell us what you're going to do for society. Triple bottom line, embedded in the strategy of the company must be the environment, must be society. In other words, integrated reporting. The environment is really nice to have. Society is really nice to have. Oh, I've made my money now. Or can I do something to serve the environment as charity? I've made my money now. Or can I donate some money to a hospital? Wrong strategy. So the reason why we don't do it well is because we feel that they're separate. They are not separate. When you do, as a board, when you're approving the strategy for your company, ask yourself, is this strategy integrated? Are we looking at the creation of shared value? Value for the business, value for the environment, value for society. Must be one strategy so that we can do ESG that way. So that when you report sustainability, when you report environment, when you report governance, it's one entity. So we need to move through a triple bottom line framework, what is called stakeholder capitalism as opposed to shareholder capitalism. The stakeholder should be stakeholder involves everyone. The business is there, the shareholder is there, the government is there. So it's a mindset shift. We must shift from this notion of corporate social responsibility to the notion of creation of shared value, CSV, as opposed to CSR. That is the only way we can get ESG taken as an important factor. The integrated reporting that is in King 3 and King 4 that we're pushing, and also in the ZIM code as well.
Professor, we will not be able to conclude this discussion without looking at a prominent discussion in boards today. Women on boards. There's a question from Stella that says, do female-led boards perform better? What's your comment on that?
The starting point is to say diversity is a virtue. Diversity is about economics. It's not a nice to have. Or let's have 1 or 2 women so our board looks diverse. Wrong approach. When you do diversity, you're going to make more money. There's a business case for diversity. When you have one type of person on the board, white males on board, you're going to make less money than a diverse board. When you have old people, young people, engineers, English teachers, women, disabled people, when you have a diverse board, it's a more productive board. So what we must emphasize is that diversity is not a nice to have. Diversity is about economics. You make more money because you have a diverse board. You must understand that when you're appointing these boards. It's not charity to have women on the boards, it's economics. Coming to women is a particular type of diversity. Women are better managers than men. Women have got better skills than men. And that's coming from a man, so it must be right. I'm saying that. So when you have women, more women on these boards, they will perform better than before because of these new skills women will bring on the boards. The tragedy is that many people put women on the board as a nice to have to decorate the board, to make the board look beautiful, look acceptable. Put a woman there, a token woman. Shame on you. Women-led boards are more effective, more dynamic, and more profitable than otherwise. And so when we have women on these boards, we are creating value. We are generating more profitability. Diversity is about economics. And always remember that it's not about charity, it's not about a nice to have. And so, yes, women have skills that men don't have. Women have temperance and attitudes that men don't have. When they're on boards, they bring value. They're not there to make you look pretty. They're there to create value and make the business more profitable. Diversity is about business. There's a business case for having women on boards.
Professor, thank you very much. I would like to thank you, Professor, and put this to an end. I've seen most of the questions that we have. They are very identical, and I think you've touched them as you went through your presentation. Thank you very much for being on the Boardroom today, Professor. I would also want
just one comment before I go. Now, I want us to, as Zimbabweans, to think very carefully about how we can make a difference. The board is a very important vehicle in driving our companies. So as board members, as CEOs and senior managers, it is within you to make a difference within the company that you're working with. Ask not what others can do to drive the business case for your company. Ask not what others can do to drive the Zimbabwean agenda. Zimbabwe will prosper if they are prosperous companies. Zimbabwe will prosper if our boards are well run. Zimbabwe will prosper if our board members are literate. Zimbabwe will prosper if our board members are bringing about effectiveness of those boards. So the board is a vehicle of economic development. The board is a key driver of national development. So let us take a vested interest approach to the trajectory of our country by using our boards as vehicles of development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for those parting words. And I would like to thank the Institute of Directors, XC, the chairman, Mr. Juro, was there, their councillors there, their staff members who worked with me to make this successful. I'd like to thank the audience for joining us. Join us every Friday for webinars. Next week will be Easter holiday, and I wish you and your family a better holiday. So we